Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Jaya Jaya Prabhu Jaya Jaya Prabhu
Thank you so much, Hare Krishna devotees. Hare Krishna Prabhu, back to you.
Thank you, Abhay Prabhu, for the wonderful kirtan. Devotees, we will continue Bhajan at the end of the program and move on to the next part. So this next part is our class celebrating Srila Bhakti Vinoda Thakura, and class will be given by our dear Satya Prabhu. Satya Prabhu needs no introduction. He is our servant leader. Thank you, Prabhu, and over to you.
Thank you, Abhay Prabhu, for the beautiful kirtan. We could not hear your bhajan. Hoping to hear at the end. Time permits. Thank you. And Prashant Prabhu, thank you very much for the introduction. So devotees, thank you all for joining. Today is the glorious disappearance day of Srila Bhakti Vinoda Thakura. He is the spiritual master of Srila Gaura Das Babaji Maharaj, who is the spiritual master of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj, and who is Bhakti Vinoda Thakura's son. And also Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur is the spiritual master of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada, our Prabhupada. So our Srila Prabhupada is the great grand disciple of Srila Bhakti Vinoda Thakura. So it's very important to know this. Generally, people ask when you talk about celebrating Disappearance Day of Acharyas, people generally ask why we celebrate. So Appearance Day we understand, but why Disappearance Day also? So Srila Prabhupada answered this once, that on the absolute platform, there is no difference between the appearance and disappearance of the great Acharyas. So it's like sunshine and sunrise and sunset, both are beautiful. So in that way, so what it means is that whether it is an avatar of Krishna or the pure devotees of the Lord, like Acharyas, we don't consider them to have a temporary existence in the material world. We think of them as eternal. So their appearance and the disappearance in this world is not considered as material birth and death in that sense. So therefore, we celebrate the Appearance Day of our Acharyas because by their appearance, they give mercy to everyone in this world. And we celebrate the Disappearance Day because they have joined the Lord in His eternal Nitya Leela, eternal pastimes. So we celebrate that also. So in any case, we worship the Acharyas to get their mercy, because Acharya Shakti is very, very important to succeed in the bhakti practice. That's what the Shastra says. So with that, I would like to speak a little bit about Srila Bhakti Vinoda Thakura as a unlimited glories. So I read his autobiography and also the Seventh Goswami book by Rupavilas Prabhu, and heard from many other senior devotees. So with that, Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Saksharan Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangam Langete Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Vande Shri Gurundina Taranam. So Srila Bhakti Vinoda Thakura was one of our most recent Acharya. After Srila Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami and Jiva Goswami, the next link, which was just after Lord Chaitanya's period. Then after a few hundred years, we have the appearance of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Baldev Vidya Bhushan, and before that, Narottam Das Thakur, Shyamanand Pandit. So all these great acharyas appeared. And then after that, we get the appearance of Bhakti Vinoda Thakur. So Bhakti Vinoda Thakur made a very phenomenal contribution to the Vaishnavism in general, and especially to Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. And he is considered to be the modern day, the root of modern day Gaudiya Sampradaya. It is from him Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur drew knowledge, guidance, and inspiration to perform his large-scale preaching work and spreading the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya. So Bhakti Vinoda Thakur represents the potency of Lord Chaitanya. So he was tremendously empowered Acharya. So he wrote more than 100 books and songs. So to name some which really very inspirational. Krishna Samhita, and there is a Jaiva Dharma, the beautiful book, Sri Chaitanya Shikshamrita, Vaishnava Siddhanta Mala, Gitavali, Prema Pradipa, Manasiksha, the Tikka, the commentaries on that, Charanagati poems. So there are so many, Gita Mala, there are so many books he wrote. So I would like to read the Pranam Mantra of Bhakti Vinoda Thakur. You go to the next slide. So this is Bhakti Vinoda Thakur Pranati. I'll read this. Namo Bhakti Vinodaya Satchidananda Namine Gaura Shakti Swarupaya Rupanugavarayate. It means, I offer my respectful obeisances unto Satchidananda Bhakti Vinoda Thakur. Bhakti Vinoda, who is transcendental energy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, is a strict follower of the Goswamis headed by Srila Rupa. He is Satchidananda Bhakti Vinoda Thakur. So this title Satchidanand was given to him by Gaudiya Goswami Sangha because of his monumental contribution to Gaudiya movement. He extensively preached the message of Lord Chaitanya during his time. And also in this Pranam Mantra, you see, he is referred to as Gaura Shakti Swarupaya. That means he is a personification of the Shakti of Lord Chaitanya. So with that definition, he is also, we can safely say, he is a Shaktivesh avatar of the Lord. So the Lord has different types of avatars. One is Shaktivesh. Shaktivesh means the Lord gives the Jiva a special power to do some extraordinary work on behalf of the Lord. So that's what Shaktivesh. That's indirect. So, but anyway, so we can safely say Bhakti Vinoda Thakur is Shaktivesh avatar of the Lord. And also, you see in the Pranam Mantra, it is said is Rupanugavarayate. So Va means best, the best. So Bhakti Vinoda Thakur is considered to be the foremost amongst the followers of Srila Rupa Goswami. So we all are called Rupanugas because we're the followers of Rupa Goswami's footprints, meaning we follow the instructions of Srila Rupa Goswami of Vrindavan. So that's our identification in the practice of bhakti. But Bhakti Vinoda Thakur has been glorified as the foremost among all the followers of Rupa Goswami. So if you read Bhakti Vinoda Thakur's books and his poems and songs and things like that, in many places, he had personally revealed his spiritual identity. Astonishing. So what is his identity in the spiritual world, in his Nitya Seva? So these acharyas like Bhakti Vinoda Thakur are not ordinary jivas, are not ordinary souls. Bhakti Vinoda Thakur is the eternal associate of the Lord who descended into this material plane for the sake of spreading the message of Lord Chaitanya. So after the disappearance of the followers of Lord Chaitanya, as I said, the 6 Goswamis, and then Srinivas Acharya, Narottam Das Thakur, Shyamanand Pandit, Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur, Baldev Vidyabhushan, all these great acharyas, there was a dark age where the principles and Siddhanta of Gaudiya Vaishnavism were obscured or even diminished to a greater extent in India. So if you read the preface written by Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur to Jaiva Dharma, book of Bhakti Vinoda, and Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur explains this dark age. He says that during this dark age, the entire world was covered by the dark clouds of sense gratification. People are so much engrossed into sense gratification. Voidism, meaning the Sunyavad, was very prevalent at the time. And the impersonal Vedanta philosophy also very, very prominent. So it was like, so he describes it like this. It was like a heyday for Apasampradaya. Apasampradaya means the people who do not follow the bona fide sampradayas. They just manufacture their own rules and they just follow that and their own manufactured rules. So they're outside of sampradaya. That's called apasampradaya. It was very prominent during that dark age. And also I was thinking about the culture of India was changing. At the time Bhakti Vinoda Thakura appeared, it was a very challenging time in one sense, from materially speaking. So Lord Chaitanya and all his followers and Acharyas, Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur, Baldev Vidyabhushan, they all existed within the traditional society, meaning within the Vedic culture, because Vedic culture was still prevalent, and these Acharyas appeared and they furthered the Bhakti movement, or the message of Lord Chaitanya. But after that, if you look back the history, the 17th century, from the 17th and the 18th century onwards, when India became a British colony, along with the British Raj rule, came a very sustained campaign to Christianize India, meaning the British, the missionaries, they want to convert the Hindus into Christians or to Christianity. There's a big campaign. So the Christian missionaries came to India and they worked in the field of education, because they thought that if we bring this modern educational system to Indian people, it'll be very easy for them to establish the doctrine of Christianity and convince them. So that was an idea. So they worked in the field of education. They established the English or foreign educational system and modern scientific knowledge. And that is what, in fact, sparked the Bengali Renaissance. We all might have read in history. And Bhakti Vinoda Thakur was at the heart of Bengali Renaissance, and there was a conflict of culture also in India. I'm talking about this because to explain the challenge faced by Bhakti Vinoda Thakur. So there is a conflict of culture, and there was a tradition in India. Then there was this modern British culture, and some people got educated under the British. So then they naturally become influenced by that Western culture. So those who are not educated by the British, then they kept up with their traditional culture, this Vedic culture. But a significant number of intelligent people got educated by the British, and that was particularly because if you want to get a job with the British government, then you'll have to go with their system of education. So the people were forced to take up the modern educational system. So within that system, Bhakti Vinoda Thakur was born. So that's the condition in which this great Acharya was born. So in fact, he was also educated in that system. He studied Western philosophies also dutifully. And out of that, we see he got some valuable knowledge. At the same time, he was also attracted very much to the Vedic knowledge. So he didn't avoid the Vedic knowledge. In fact, he learned both the modern education and also the Western philosophies. Along with that, he also studied Vedic scriptures. Others also tried to mix the two things together, in different types of philosophies, and largely they were influenced by Upanishads, but not by the Srimad Bhagavatam, not by the Bhagavad philosophy. But Bhakti Vinoda Thakur somehow or other got interested in Bhagavata philosophy, especially interested in Lord Chaitanya's teachings, which is based on Srimad Bhagavatam anyway. So we see that through his writings like Chaitanya Shikshamrita and Tattva Viveka. If you read all these books, and of course other works also, we find that he had knowledge of Western philosophies very well, very expertly. He will present the philosophy of Achintya Bheda Bheda in comparison with the Western philosophies beautifully. But when he began studying Lord Chaitanya's philosophy, then he understood that this is by far superior to the foreign philosophies and is by far superior to the impersonal Vedanta philosophy also. So then coming back to the Bengali Renaissance, as I said, there was a reformation of Hindu religion happening at that time, because the Christian missionaries were trying to convert a lot of Hindus. And what they did is, the Christian missionaries, they started to criticize the Hindu system, saying the Hindus are polytheistic, the idol worshippers, ritualistic, the caste based discrimination, so things like that. So they were hoping that by this criticism, the Hindus would give up their religious system and adopt the doctrine of Christianity. So that was their idea. But however, the things did not work according to their plan. So Hindus tried to reform their own religious system, and that's what led to the Bengali Renaissance. So basically, which was in the 19th century, if I'm not wrong. Yeah. So many of the shapers of modern Hinduism, starting from Rajaram Mohan Rai, Dayananda Saraswati, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, Swami Vivekananda, many others, even after that, Arvind Ghosh, a little bit later. So many of them were from Bengal, and they formulated the modern understanding of Hinduism. So rather than accepting Christianity, most of these leaders, they tried to redefine Hinduism in contemporary terms. So, but the pendulum swung very far, meaning they want to modernize the Hinduism, but in that process, they minimize the importance of the Vedic teachings. So that's the problem. So though they were considered, these great leaders considered as the reformers, but unfortunately from the Vaishnava point of view, they were not reformers. In fact, they took the human society, especially in India, in the opposite direction of Vedic teachings. So because of that, the monism become very, very prominent. The monotheistic philosophy becomes very prominent in India, and also atheism become very prominent. So people started to engross in sense gratification and so on, avoiding the Vedic teachings. So so all these changes basically threatened to attack the very roots of Vedic culture in India at that time. So the proponents of this sort of ideology, of this reformation of Hinduism or whatever, it denigrated the bhakti in various ways and denigrated those who practiced and taught bhakti also, unfortunately. And also another big problem that Bhakti Vinoda Thakur was facing at the time is the Gaudiya philosophy was totally misrepresented by many deviants. So that gave rise to the Sahajas, the upper sampradayas. There are many types. So Sahajas is very prominent. Sahaja means, as I said, they don't follow any rules of bhakti principles, but on the name of Vaishnavism, they do all kinds of bad things. So, and because of this, Lord Chaitanya's movement had gotten bad name among the elite and the cultured classes of society, because the members of Upper Sampradaya, as I said, behaved very badly and immorally in the name of Vaishnavism. So, but if you see, Lord Chaitanya's mission is to establish the Sankirtan movement in this Kali Yuga, because he appears only in one day of Brahma, and it's a golden Kali Yuga because the Lord Chaitanya gives the highest, he gives Mahamantra himself, and he comes and spreads the Sankirtan movement, the chanting of the holy name, and by which we can attain the highest destination in the spiritual world. So now because of all these external socio-political the factors were affecting Lord Chaitanya's movement. So Lord Chaitanya wanted to send his own eternal associate to once again revive the Sankirtana movement and to re-establish the original teachings of the Lord for the people of Kali Yuga. So which verse in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says this? Famous verse.
Yata yata hi dharmasya
Glanir Bhavati
Bharata abhyusthanam adharmasya tatatmanam sajamyaham. I'm sorry, I might have missed some words, but
no, that is correct. Then
paritranam nritranaya sadhuna vinachaya dadushkritan dharma samsthapanachaya sambhavami yuge yuge.
Fantastic. So just to establish the religious principles and to protect the devotees and eliminate the miscreants, the Lord appears himself or he sends his empowered devotees. So Bhakti Vinoda Thakur just came and just did what Lord Chaitanya wanted as an empowered Acharya. He revived the Sankirtana movement. He re-established the original teachings of Lord Chaitanya for the people of Kali Yuga. But if you read his autobiography, and although in his early days he did not manifest externally the devotion, he had a pure devotion inside his heart, but he didn't manifest externally. But from his own works, we can understand his true identity. It's very interesting. So in Kalyana Kalpataru, it's a collection of Bhakti Vinoda Thakur's poems. He writes, there's one verse where he discloses his identity, spiritual identity. He says, Yugala Sevaya Shri Rasa Mandale Niyukta Koramai Lalita Sakira Ayogya Kinkari Vinoda Darichepai. It means Bhakti Vinoda Thakur holds your feet and begs to you to engage this unworthy servant of Lalita Shaki in the service of the divine couple while they are performing the Rasa Leela. So here he says that I am Lalita Sakira Ayogya Kinkari, meaning he is Lalita Saki's maid servant. So in this way, so what does it mean? He is a maid servant of Lalita Saki. Can anybody guess what it means? He is a maid servant of Lalita Gopi.
Manjaris.
Manjari, very good. Fantastic. So he's telling that he identified himself as Manjari in the circle of Lalita Saki, in the group of Lalita Saki. Because there are Manjaris as, every gopis, the principal gopis, they have set of Manjaris under them and they serve the gopis so that the gopis can serve Radha and Krishna. So Lalita Saki is a principal gopi friend of Srimati Radharani in Goloka Vrindavan. So Bhakti Vinoda Thakur is a Manjari in Lalita's group. So then he also gives further details about his identity. I think he introduces like this, then he gives more detail in Gita Mala. So I don't want to go into detail, but he says that Varane Tarit Vasa Taravali Kamala Manjari Nama. He says that my name is Kamala Manjari. So in his eternal form, he is Manjari. So as I said, Manjaris are those who are assistants to the Sakis. So we can understand that Bhakti Vinoda Thakur is a Kamala Manjari in the Nitya Leela, the spiritual world. And Lord Chaitanya has sent him to re-establish the teachings of Lord Chaitanya and revive the Sankirtana movement. So that is the spiritual position of Bhakti Vinoda Thakur. So yes, he's not an ordinary personality. And in his manifest pastime in the material world, his ancestors came from Kayashta community. It's a upper class. From the Varna point of view, they come closer to Kshatriya Varna. So one of the prominent members of Kayashta community was the contemporary of Lord Chaitanya, was Krishnananda Datta. He's also a devotee of Lord Krishna, but he was a contemporary. And 350 years after Krishnananda Datta disappeared, in the same line, Srila Bhakti Vinoda Thakur appeared. So he also appeared in a very aristocratic family. And his father's name was Ananta Chandra Datta, and his mother's name was Jagat Mohini Devi. So they were the most fortunate parents of Bhakti Vinoda Thakura. And he appeared in 1838 and he was named Kedarnath Datta. So even as a young child, he was a prodigy. If you read his autobiography, he learned everything very quickly. In fact, he composed his first poem at the age of 2. Can you believe it? First poem at the age of 2. By the age of 6, he thoroughly mastered all the detailed facts of the greatest epics, Ramayana and Mahabharata and Upanishads and things like that. So you ask any character in Ramayana or Mahabharata, he will go to greater detail. He will give you greater detail about the personalities and also the principles spoken in Ramayana and Mahabharata. It is at the age of 6. At the age of 9, he already began research into the astrology, Surya Siddhanta, which he gave up after 1 year of study, but he thought that it's not of no use for him. Then at the age of 10, he had started understanding the spiritual truths, meaning he started diving deep into the Vedic scriptures and understanding what is beyond Brahman, what is beyond Paramatma, and he started to realize the personal aspect of the Supreme Lord and the truth, Tattva. So, of course, these are all pastimes because the eternal associates, when they come into the human society, they also imitate to the ways of human society. Why? Just to make the pastimes more relatable by the common people. Or put it this way, to make the pastimes more credible in the eyes of the people at large. So that's why they go through all these things like ordinary jivas go through. But they also exhibit extraordinary abilities. So then he started to inquire about the purpose of life. And even at the tender age, you would enter into philosophical and spiritual discussions with grown-ups, other scholars at the time. And they were astonished at his scholarly presentation of the conclusions of Vedic teachings. And so it said that he would often convince the atheist that there is God exists and he is a person. So one of the things very amazing about Bhakti Vinoda Thakura from the childhood, even though he was in the culture of where the monism and voidism and impersonal Vedanta was very prominent, he was very firmly convinced in his heart that Lord Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and he is a person. The Supreme Lord is a person. It's very, very firmly established in his heart. So there are some pastimes, the childhood pastimes is mentioned in Swalikita Jivani, that is his autobiography book, so which are not normally known to devotees. So I would like to share some couple of pastimes. There was one tantric brahmachari who would stay near his house in Bengal, in the temple nearby. And sometimes the young Bhakti Vinoda Thakura would visit the temple where this tantric brahmachari was staying, and he would keenly observe what this brahmachari, the tantric brahmachari, is doing. So this brahmachari would do some fire sacrifices and he would recite some mantras. And Bhakti Vinoda Thakura, even though he was young, but he knows the Vedic scriptures very well. So you could not understand the mantras this brahmachari was reciting. And this tantric brahmachari was living in a temple surrounded by his followers always. So Bhakti Vinoda Thakura was observing all these things. And this brahmachari also had a human skull. And he would do some special pujas to the skull and things like that. And then Bhakti Vinoda Thakura heard from his friends that this skull smiles if someone offers him a water or milk or something like that. So Bhakti Vinoda Thakura was very curious. So he said, okay, let me check it out. So he entered into this tantric brahmachari's room. It is very scary also at the time, but he was so young, but he entered his room alone. And he went to the human skull where he kept. And Bhakti Vinoda Thakur offered milk and water to the skull and said, okay, please take it. So, but the skull never smiled at him. So, so in this way, the reason this pastime I'm narrating is that in this Bhakti Vinoda Thakur was a very inquisitive child. And he wanted to verify the facts. He wants to understand things as it is. So he was never, he never took things blindly. So you can see that quality even when he was a very, very young child. He was very brave as well. So the another one time, there was a Durga Puja, because it's very famous in Bengal, West Bengal. So before the Durga Puja festival, there was a carpenter who was assigned to make the backdrops and wooden deity of Mother Durga for the Durga Puja. So Bhakti Vinoda Thakur was watching this carpenter doing the work, and so he went to the carpenter and asked, okay, so you are making this beautiful goddess of Durga. So he asked, when does goddess Durga enter this deity? You are making the deity. Then the carpenter replied that, well, she enters the deity at the time the eyes are painted. When I paint the eyes, at the time she enters. So Bhakti Vinoda Thakur said, okay. So then he started watching this carpenter. And so then one day this carpenter painted the eyes to the Durga deity. Then Bhakti Vinoda Thakur went to him and said, I didn't see the goddess Durga enter into the deity when you painted the eyes. And the carpenter said, it is usually when the Brahmins do the prana pratishtha, at that time the Durga Devi enters the deity, not when you paint the eyes. So I spoke wrongly, he said. Then Bhakti Vinoda Thakur was waiting for the prana pratishtha festival to happen. So then after a few days, the Brahmins, Brahmanas did the prana pratishtha. And Bhakti Vinoda Thakur was watching. Then he went to carpenter. After that, he went to the carpenter and said, I didn't see the goddess enter into the deity this time also. This Brahmanas were doing prana pratishtha. So then the carpenter thought that, okay, this boy is not an ordinary boy. So then he said, you know what, my dear Bhakti Vinod, I will tell you the truth. I don't believe this mumbo jumbo of these Brahmanas, what they recite, because if you recite the mantras so purely, then of course the prana pratishtha happens. But these Brahmanas, I don't believe in them. In fact, carpenter said, I actually believe in one God, Parameshwar. I don't believe in the multiplicity of gods and goddesses and so on. I only worship the one supreme God. So when Bhakti Vinoda Thakur heard that, he was very happy to hear that, because as I said, Bhakti Vinoda Thakur from the young age, from the tender age, he was very firmly convinced that the Supreme Lord is one and he is a person. So when he heard this from the carpenter, he was overjoyed. And also he had to, Bhakti Vinoda Thakur, for educational reasons, he had to stay with his maternal uncle. And his maternal uncle was studying law at that time. So though the maternal uncle was a theist initially, but later on he became influenced by these bogus philosophies I talked about, the propagated by these the Bengali Renaissance reformers, the scholars, Rajaram Mohan Roy, Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, all those guys. So he got very influenced. His uncle got very influenced. Though he was a theist, then he became started to follow these bogus philosophies, which is Brahma Samaj. And he started to preach to Bhakti Vinoda Thakur about these bogus philosophies. So Bhakti Vinoda Thakur said in this autobiography, he was very confused by his uncle because he was very persuasive, but still he did not give up the chanting of the holy names of Lord Ram. Bhakti Vinoda writes that even such a young age, he never gave up the chanting. He says that even at the young age, I was chanting the holy names constantly because I had firm faith in the holy names. He acknowledged that he never let all these other opposing ideologies disturb his faith in the holy name. So we can understand the determination and the faith, strong faith that he had. So I think at the age of 11, when he was 11 years old, his father left this world. And at the age of 12, his mother had him married. But his formal education started at the age of 6, and he went to the Sanskrit school, and he studied under the very, very powerful Sanskrit scholar at that time, Vachaspati Vidyapati. We all studied about him. So he learned Sanskrit very quickly, and at the age of 7, he was admitted into the Krishnanagar College in Bengal. And thereafter, he just went on from strength to strength, and he was a brilliant student. He's a prodigy. So eventually, in his teenage, he became a student of the well-known scholar Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar. So one day, Bhakti Vinoda Thakur, it's a beautiful conversation with Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar. So Bhakti Vinoda Thakur had an argument with him. So Bhakti Vinoda Thakur asked Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar about God. So his reply was, well, let's not talk about God because we cannot see God, we cannot understand God. So let's not talk about God, let us talk about something else. So Bhakti Vinoda Thakur did not like that answer. So Bhakti Vinoda Thakur replied to this very powerful, well-known scholar saying, my dear sir, if you have not seen God, if you do not know God, if you don't understand God, then why have you written in your textbook that the absolute truth is formless? And you said he doesn't appear in this world in any form. He asked that question without any fear. Then Bhakti Vinoda Thakur also continued saying that, do you think God is so weak that he cannot appear in any form and he cannot maintain that form eternally? And this Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar was so astonished by that intellectual questions that he asked with complete conviction. So this is the young Bhakti Vinoda Thakur said, actually God is a person. He was preaching to Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, such a powerful scholar. He's saying that God is a person and we are his eternal part and parcels. And we have eternal relationship of love. And that is called bhakti. So he defined bhakti. The bhakti means we have eternal relationship of love with Krishna. That is bhakti. So in this way, he was not afraid to preach even such a young age. He started preaching in a very, very young age. So soon, fast forwarding in, I think 1956, the Calcutta University was started. Then Bhakti Vinoda Thakur was one of the first students who enrolled in the university, along with many others. If you look at his, the fellow students, they are so illustrious. And many of them become very prominent in the social life. Bankim Chandra Chatterjee, Shishir Kumar Ghosh, there are so many, such a illustrious fellow students he had from the material point of view. So then Bhakti Vinoda Thakur started to study various other world religions. As I said, Christianity, he studied Brahma Samaj, and he studied Islam. So in this way, he mastered the various religious philosophies. He became an expert in comparative religion at the time. But his preference, as I said, had always been Bhagavata philosophy from Srimad Bhagavatam, and especially zooming into Gaudiya Vaishnava philosophy. Then after his education, he became a school teacher. Then he became a headmaster at the young age of 22. Then later on, he accepted the government service under British government. And he became the deputy magistrate eventually. And he served in various places in Orissa, of course, Bengal and Tripura and all those places. He also went to Tripura to serve the king of Tripura for a while. And the king of Tripura became his disciple later on. Now look at the power of Bhakti Vinoda Thakur's purity. So further on, whenever there is a dispute or problem between like a Brahma Samaj people and the Christians, then the British government will ask Bhakti Vinoda Thakur to settle the disputes. So he settled many disputes like that. In fact, Bhakti Vinoda Thakur preferred Christianity over Brahma Samaj. It's a very interesting reason he gives, because at least the Christians accept God as a person, whereas the Brahmos even deny that. So their philosophy, the Brahma Samaj philosophy, is monotheistic. More, I would say, the atheistic, because they believe in Vedas, but they deny that the Vedic scriptures are not apurushaya. Meaning, put it other way, the Vedic scriptures are not the ultimate authority transcending human reasons and conscience. They don't believe in that, because we believe Vedic scriptures are apurushaya. It's not man-made. Dharmam tu sakshat bhagavat pranitam. So it is manifested by the Lord himself. But they don't believe in that. If there is a conflict between the Vedic teaching and the human reasons, they say the human reasons prevail. So in that way, it is atheistic. They deny the avatars of the Lord. They said that Lord is formless. So later on, Bhakti Vinoda Thakura engaged in many, many debates with these Brahma Samaj scholars or Brahmos and defeated many of them. So then Bhakti Vinoda Thakura developed a great desire to do research into the Vaishnava text, especially Gaudiya Vaishnava scriptures. So he came to Calcutta and searched for Srimad Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita. After 1 year of search, if I'm not mistaken, with great difficulty, he found a copy of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, and he started to study the scriptures so deeply. And in fact, Bhakti Vinoda Thakura writes himself that he said that when I did the deep study of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, he said, I had a transformation of heart, at least from the external point of view. Meaning, he is a Kamala Manjari, so he has the pure bhakti manifest eternally in his heart. But the Acharya is writing like this, meaning that bhakti is started to manifest externally. So after that, he had come into his Vaishnava element. I'll put it like that. After that, he was very busily engaged in studying the Vaishnava, Gaudiya Vaishnava works. And he started to write. He's a prolific writer. He will study the scriptures, he will understand it, he will realize it, and he will write his realizations. So, and writing about them, and his attempt was to make the philosophy of Lord Chaitanya available for the people of that time. As I said, the Gaudiya Vaishnava had a bad name at that time because of the Sahajas. So he wants to revive that. He wants to re-establish Sankirtana movement. So he did that by writing many works, and these works, he tried to explain the relevance of the teachings to the world at that time. And at the same time, he had to carefully analyze the Vedic scriptures and see what was essential and what was secondary, because there was an attack on the Vedic religion at the time. So he wants to combat that by carefully analyzing the scriptures and telling people what they should follow, what they don't have to. So by doing that, then he showed how the philosophy of Lord Chaitanya was the highest philosophy. He established that intellectually. So this was something he did in order to persuade the people of that time to get faith in Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtana movement. He had a very busy job. He was a district magistrate. He was busy with his job, and he has a big family. He had 10 children. He has a duty to raise his children. But despite he's so busy, but he spent a lot of his time in researching and writing. If you look at his daily schedule, he was writing 6 hours every day, because the realization that the Acharya had in his heart, and he was writing. And he has left some very, very valuable works for people, and people who read them, they are very attracted to the way in which he analyzed things. And there is a very famous essay that he wrote. It's historic. It's a Bhagavad theology and the precepts, which has been published since then, a small booklet. I think I would recommend everyone reading that. The Bhagavata theology and the precepts. Very, very powerful booklet in exposition of Bhagavad philosophy. In fact, I read that in the very beginning stages of my devotional service. Blown away by how he presented the philosophy. So he continued, always he was studying, researching the scriptures. And he started to read other previous acharyas' books. And in fact, this intensified when he was transferred to Puri as a manager of Jagannath temple there, because there was a lot of systemic issues in the Puri temple management. So the British government asked Bhakti Vinoda Thakur to be a manager of Jagannath temple at the time. So when he went there to Puri from Krishnanagar, he studied deeply Jiva Goswami's Satsandarbhas. And that's where he started to dive deep into Baldev Vidyabhushan's Pramaya Ratnavali, which is predominantly based on Madhavacharya's teachings. And he started to dive deep into the Govinda Bhashya commentary on Brahma Sutras of Baldev Vidyabhushan, and also Srimad Bhagavatam. In Puri, he started to go very, very deep into these scriptures. And he also started studying about other previous acharyas' bhakti scriptures. And in the Puri, it was very amazing how he did is he set up many, many proper systems in Puri Jagannath temple, because things have come to the point of disarray in Jagannath temple. But Bhakti Vinoda Thakur is a very stern, very powerful administrator. And he's also a very pure devotee, very, very pure. So he set right all the systems in Jagannath temple and nobody could question him. He was so powerful because of the spiritual purity. And around that time also, there were many people who from Upper Sampradaya were cheating the people at the time. So very famous pastime. I'm going to say this in a very short manner because of the time. And there was a man called Bishakishen, who claimed to be an avatar of Mahavishnu at the time. He made a self-declaration that he was a Mahavishnu's avatar. Of course, he had some mystic powers, so he was doing some some activities by his mystic powers. But he was also causing a lot of trouble to people. So many people complained to the district collector about Bishakishena. So then the district collector requested Bhakti Vinoda Thakur. He's such a powerful person to look into this matter and settle it. So Bhakti Vinoda Thakur approached this yogi, the mystic yogi. But mystic yogi understood it's not a normal person. So he tried to flatter him and deceive him or whatever. But Bhakti Vinoda Thakur was very, very strong. And he found that this yogi is causing a lot of trouble. So Bhakti Vinoda Thakur took action against this yogi and put him in jail. Bishakishena. So this Bishakishena this yogi was so angry. He was very angry at Bhakti Vinoda Thakur, and he used his mystic powers and cursed Bhakti Vinoda Thakur. He did something. Then immediately Bhakti Vinoda Thakur's family fell very sick, including Bhakti Vinoda Thakur. But Bhakti Vinoda Thakur did not relent. So eventually, after a few days, this yogi died in the prison. So this is very interesting because Bhakti Vinoda Thakur never gave up because this guy is wrong. So he has to be punished. So he took a stringent action. He was not afraid of the yogis and the mystic powers and so on. So this is an example of Krishna always protects his pure devotees. So which verse in Bhagavad Gita Krishna says this? Anyone remembers the verse? I'll give a hint. Sipram bhavati dharmatma.
Rame bhakta pranashyati.
Kaunteya pradijanahi. Rame bhakta pranashyati. Sipram bhavati dharmatma. Sashvat shantim ligachati. Kaunteya pradijanahi. Rame bhakta pranashyati. Beautiful, Tata. Thank you. So meaning, he quickly becomes righteous and attains the lasting peace. O son of Kunti, declare it boldly. My devotees will never perish. My devotee never perishes. This is an example of that. So people may disturb us or disturb the pure devotees, but Krishna will take care of them. So in this way, Bhakti Vinoda Thakur not only arrested this Bishakishena, he also arrested many of the pseudo-spiritualists at that time. So then in Puri, Bhakti Vinoda Thakur gave so many Bhagavatam classes. In fact, he started a center called Bhagavat Samaj. There are many, many Vaishnava scholars will come and they discuss Bhagavata philosophy, and also they come to hear from Bhakti Vinoda Thakura, lotus mouth, the discourses on Srimad Bhagavatam. So that is when his son Bimala Prasad, who is Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, later on to be known as Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, learned Srimad Bhagavatam from his father, Bhakti Vinod, and he had become a very eloquent speaker. Very, very young age, he became an eloquent speaker of Srimad Bhagavatam. And Bhakti Vinoda Thakur writes that he and his other scholars, his friends, will go and attend Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur's Bhagavatam class when he was a small boy. So then Bhakti Vinoda Thakur was transferred to Krishnanagar later, West Bengal. And one of the, so Bhakti Vinoda Thakur wanted to discover the birthplace of Lord Chaitanya. That was one of the goals. And in fact, that was one of the most significant contributions of Bhakti Vinoda Thakur was the discovery of the birthplace of Lord Chaitanya, the Yoga Pith. So at that time, what happened is there was a lot of confusion around where Mahaprabhu was born. People had multiple opinions or multiple locations they're pointing to. So it was not very clear. So one time, I think the place called Kulia, which is a present-day Navadvip, Bhakti Vinoda Thakur went to the roof of his house to relax, to get some fresh air one evening. He suddenly had a vision. He saw in the distance had an illuminated house, something just illuminated in his vision. So immediately Bhakti Vinoda Thakur went to that place where that illumination happened, and he inquired from the elders there that this was the place of Lord Chaitanya's appearance. And the elders said yes. Then he did not believe, he didn't take that blindly. And he did extensive research into various old documents and scriptures and understood that it was the place where Mahaprabhu actually appeared. And he also verified it with his Siksha Guru, Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj. And he also confirmed that that is the place where Mahaprabhu took birth. So Bhakti Vinoda Thakur became overjoyed by discovering the birthplace of Mahaprabhu, one of the most holiest places in the entire creation. And Bhakti Vinoda Thakur gave it to us. So the huge credit goes to Srila Bhakti Vinoda Thakur for making available to the whole world the birthplace or the Yoga Pith of Lord Chaitanya. So we are forever indebted to Bhakti Vinoda Thakur. So in this way, Bhakti Vinoda Thakur lived his life preaching, studying the Vaishnava scriptures and serving the Lord in many wonderful ways, composing his vast amount of literary works. And these works very established very nicely Lord Chaitanya's philosophy, and they also help us compare it to other religions and to other philosophies in the world. So in this way, he presented Lord Chaitanya's philosophy to the modern world. And even though it is over 120 years or so years gone by, still his works are relevant to the modern day as well. So that way we have a different flavor than the previous works of our previous acharyas. If you look at it, I was thinking about it, we will see that Sri Rupa Goswami or even Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, a few hundred years later, they don't mention anything about what was happening in the world outside of India. They won't mention anything about the contemporary society in their works, or about other scriptures or other religion and so on. So all they mention is traditional acharyas like Sripad Ramanujacharya, Sripad Madhavacharya, or Sripad Sankaracharya. So that's the extent to which they mention things in their works. So as I explained before, because society was changing and we have all this mixture of cultures happening with the British invasion, and even in the modern world, then people will appreciate it that Bhakti Vinoda Thakur made some references to the modern culture as well in his works. Of course, Lord Chaitanya's philosophy is eternal, but society has changed radically over 500 years. And because of that, the knowledge and culture has changed radically also. So somehow or other, there has to be some communication between the eternal knowledge presented by Lord Chaitanya and the modern day knowledge that people were gaining. So the Lord Chaitanya made that connection through Bhakti Vinoda Thakur. Because before Bhakti Vinoda Thakur, during the traditional society, the times of traditional society where the Goswamis lived and other acharyas, they appeared and they lived, society did not change much for a few hundred years. If you look at Sri Ramanujacharya, who appeared in, I think in the 11th century after Sankara, which is 8th century, then Madhvacharya appeared in 13th century. So a few hundred years, hundreds of years apart, but still society had not changed much during Madhava's time. Even at Lord Chaitanya's time, even though the Muslims were there, it did not change radically. So in fact, Muslims were there even at Madhava's time, because Madhava's the Muslims' invasion happened in India 13th century. So Madhava was there at that time. But suddenly within the last few hundred years, so many changes took place. So Bhakti Vinoda Thakur is probably the first among the followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to combat this change or to address that change. And even today, his works are relevant. So that is a significant contribution to Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. So in the interest of time, so then in the year 1908, Bhakti Vinoda Thakur accepted the Babaji Vesh and began a very intense Nirjan Bhajan. Nirjan Bhajan means self-meditative worship of the Supreme Lord through chanting the holy names. So they don't preach, they don't associate with anybody. So they only preach by their example. So he took the Babaji Vesh, then he left his body on this day, this tithi of this month. He departed for the spiritual world to enter into the eternal pastimes of Shri Radha and Krishna. So there are so many things can be said in glorification of Srila Bhakti Vinoda Thakur. And there are so many pastimes in his life, but time is very short to describe the unlimited glories of the most powerful Acharya, Srila Bhakti Vinoda Thakur. So Srila Bhakti Vinoda Thakur is one of the foremost Acharya in our Sampradaya. He is the inaugurator, I'm going to say like this, inaugurator of the modern day preaching movement of Lord Chaitanya. So on this, on the day of his disappearance, we can pray at his lotus feet that we may also be worthy followers of his lotus footprints and please him by being a small part in his preaching mission, which manifested today as International Society for Krishna Consciousness by Srila Prabhupada. So with that, I'll stop here. Srila Sachidananda Bhakti Vinoda Thakur ki Jai. Srila Bhakti Vinoda Thakur's Disappearance Mahotsav ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. With that, I'll just open the floor for questions or comments. Okay, looks like no questions. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining. So with that, over to you, Prashant Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Very wonderful class. I will recollect some points just to remind everyone. So, we talked about how Bhakti Vinoda Thakur has ultimately, he had devoted his entire life, and he has a phenomenal contribution to the root of modern day Gaudiya Sampradaya. He was able to give us more than 100 books, many bhajans, and in this, what you explained, in this dark age, he was able to, a dark age that he appeared in, he was able to navigate all of these challenges and still help revive Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings and revive the movement and establish the Yuga Dharma of chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra in this world. And you also explained about his spiritual identity as Lalita Sakhi's maidservant, and that he's a manjari, he's an assistant to Lalita Sakhi, and he's actually the Kamala manjari. So thank you for that, Prabhu. And finally, the last point I'd like to recollect is, he was able to help discover the birthplace of Lord Chaitanya, which is one of the holiest places in the entire world. And through all of his work, he was able to connect the eternal knowledge that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given us to modern day knowledge and modern day culture, and that's relevant even to this day, because it helped inaugurate the preaching movement that we are in. So thank you so much for the wonderful class, Prabhuji.
Prabhu, there's a personal comment when somebody sent in the chat. So they're asking me to speak about Gadadhar Pandit a little bit, because it's Gadadhar Pandit Disappearance Day as well. If you give me 2 minutes, I'll just say some thoughts.
Please go ahead.
So thank you very much, whoever the anonymous person who wrote to me about Gadadhar Pandit Disappearance Day. Absolutely. Today is another great event, which is Gadadhar Pandit disappeared from this manifest world and entered into the Nitya Leela of Lord Chaitanya. So Lord Chaitanya is always accompanied by, it's a Panchatattva, so he's always accompanied by the plenary expansion, which is Sri Nityananda Prabhu. And his incarnation, Sri Advaita Acharya. And his eternal potency, which is Sri Gadadhar Pandit, Shakti Tattva. And his marginal potency, Jiva Tattva, is Shiva's Prabhu, Shiva's Pandit. So in the midst of them, as Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Chaitanya appears. So we should always understand that, the Mahaprabhu appears, is always accompanied by these other tattvas. So in the, I think Kavi Karnapura in Gaura Gano Desha Deepika, there's a book where it describes about Sri Gadadhar Pandit. He says that the Gadadhar Pandit is a pleasure potency of Sri Krishna, formerly known as Vrindavaneshwari. Who is Vrindavaneshwari? Srimati Radharani. So the Vrindavaneshwari is now personified in the form of Sri Gadadhar Pandit in the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya in the Gaura Leela. So that is Gadadhar Pandit. So it is confirmed in the scripture. And Sri Sarup Damodar Goswami also pointed out that in the shape of Lakshmi, the pleasure potency of Krishna, she is also Lalita Shakhi. Pretty interesting. Who is always devoted to Srimati Radharani. So Gadadhar Pandit is simultaneously an incarnation of Srimati Radharani and also Lalita Shakhi. Pretty interesting. So no one can describe Prabhupada writes in Chaitanya Charitamrita that nobody can describe the characteristics and ecstatic love of Gadadhar Pandit. So therefore another name for Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Gadadhar Prananatha, the life and soul of Gadadhar Pandit. So it is a very, very important personality, because this is Srimati Radharani without Radha Bhav. Can you imagine that? In Gaura Leela, she comes as Sri Gadadhar Pandit in Dasya Bhav to serve the Mahaprabhu. Because Mahaprabhu is assumes Radha Bhav. She just comes there to help and support and watch Gauranga Mahaprabhu. So therefore Gadadhar Pandit represents the confidential devotee of the of the Lord Gauranga. So Shri Gadadhar Pandit ki jai, Shri Gaur Gadadhar ki jai, Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you very much. So we can do a short kirtan and do Narasimha Aarti, I think.
Yes, Prabhuji. Abhay Prabhu, we will turn it over to you for Bhajan and Kirtan. Prabhuji, we cannot hear you. You are unmuted now. Still we cannot hear you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Abhay Prabhu, can you hear us?
Can we sing the bhajan, Prabhu?
Yes, we can hear you now, Prabhuji.
Okay. Gopinath, 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 Mama Nivedana Sino, Mama Nivedana Sino. Vishayi Durjana Sada Kamarata, Vishayi Durjana Sada Kamarata, Kichu Nagi Mora Guna, Kichu Nagi Mora Guna. Gopinath, 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 Amara Barasa Tumi, Amara Barasa Tumi, Tomara Charani Loi no Sharana, Tomara Charani Loi no Sharana, Tomara Kinkara Tomara Kinkara Gopinath, 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 ke mone shodive more, ke mone shodive more, na jane bakti कर्म जड़मती, ना जाने भक्ति कर्म जड़मती, परेची संसार गोरी, परेची संसार गोरी. गोपीनाथ, गोपीनाथ, Gopinath, Gopinath, सकले तुम्हारा माया, सकले तुम्हारी माया, नाही मम बल ज्ञान सुनिर्मल, नाही मम बल ज्ञान सुनिर्मल, स्वाधीन नहे काया, स्वाधीन नहे काया. Gopinath, 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 Niyat charani sthanam, Niyat charani sthanam, Mage pamara kandiya kandiya, Mage pamara kandiya kandiya, karo he karuna dano, karo he karuna dano. Gopinath, 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 tumi to sakale maru, tumi to sakale maru. Durjane tarite tomar sakati, Durjane tarite tomar sakati, ke ache papira maru, ke ache papira maru. Gopinath, 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 tumi kripa para bharu, tumi kripa para bharu. Jivera karani Asiya prapanche, Jivera karani Asiya prapanche, Leela kaile suve Sara, Leela kaile suve Sara. Gopinath, 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 Amiti dose dosi, Amiti dose dosi, Asura sakala pailo charana, Asura sakala pailo charana, Vinoda Thakura dosi, Vinoda Thakura dosi. Gopinath, 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 Gopinath. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Jaya Nitai Gauranga, Jaya Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Jaya 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 Nitai Gauranga. भक्ति विनोद ठाकुर की जय, श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय, गौर प्रेमानंदी, हरि बोल। Back to you, Prabhu. Thank you.
Prabhu, would you like to continue with Narasimha Aarti and conclude the program?
Sure, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Namaste Narasimhaya Prahlad Radhai Yanyakashikurvakha Shilatankan Khalare Ito Nasimo Parato Nasimo Yato Yato Yami Tato Nasimo Hare Nasimo Hare Hare Nasimo Narsingamade Sharanam Prapade Bhavatar Kamalavare Nakha Abhita Singha Dalita Vinita Shitu Tanubhinga Keshavadita Narahari Rupa Jai Jai Jagdish Hare Jai Jai Jagdish Hare Jai Jagdish Hare Keshavadita Narahari Rupa Jai Jai Jagdish Hare Jai Jagdish Hare Jai Jagdish Hare Jaya Narasimhade Narasimhade Jaya Narahari 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 Jaya Narahari Jaya Bhakta Prahlad Bhakta Prahlad Jaya Bhakta Prahlad Narasimhade Bhagwan ki jai, Bhakti Vinoda Narasimhade Bhagwan ki jai, Prahlad Maharaj ki jai.
Thank you, Abhay Prabhu. Prashant Prabhu, there is another question. The Tata wrote to me directly. I'll just quickly address and I'll take it offline. Is it okay?
Sure, Prabhu. Go ahead.
Okay, so 1 minute. So Tata asked, Lalita Shakti is also described as Swarup Damodar or Ramananda Rai, I don't remember which one. Gadadhar Pandit also appeared same time frame twice. How do we understand this? Please explain. So Tata, it's a very deep question, but Ramananda Rai was very close associate of Lord Chaitanya in Puri. So he is identified as series of persons. So if I remember correctly, he was Arjuna, one of the Pandavas. And he also experiences, Ramananda Rai experiences Madhurya Rasa, so therefore is identified with Lalita Sakhi. So it's Ramananda Rai is Lalita Sakhi in Gaura Leela. And he's also, Acharya say, he's also the Arjunya Gopi. And he's also Arjuna Gopa. So he has a different identity. So it is very mind-boggling because these great personalities sometimes have a dual or multiple identities as well in Gaura Leela. So in Krishna Leela, Radha and Krishna had 8 principal Sakhis, so they are they identified as different personalities in Gaura Leela also. So as I said, Ramananda Rai is Lalita Sakhi, Swarup Damodar is Vishaka. So the Acharya says that yes, these great personalities have multiple identities depending on which bhav they exhibit prominently. That I hope that answers your question a little bit. The rest I'll take it offline.
Okay.
Okay, Bhajan, over to you.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. With that, devotees, we will conclude the program. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Thanks to Sara Prabhu for this opportunity. With that, Disappearance Day of Srila Bhakti Vinoda Thakura ki jai. Disappearance Day of Sri Gadadhar Pandit ki jai. Hare Krishna Temple of Austin ki jai. We will see you all, devotees, tomorrow at the Sunday Peace program. Hare Krishna. Thank you.